this story is an important one to get out there. It's a story written in the Washington Post on Friday, I think it was.
Yeah.
And it's just another sort of element which I think should be alarming, both in terms of the question of abortion rights, but also the extent to which people will, or states, or these red states will go to inhibiting people from exercising their right to get an abortion in another state.
The fervor of the anti-abortion activists, their fixation, their obsession, that is key to understanding how we have to combat this here.
I don't know how you can't contemplate this as being authoritarian. I mean, even if you are one of those people who believe that the Supreme Court was wrong in finding a right to abortion to people and that it should be a state's decision, there really is no analog to what we're seeing in Texas now as far as inhibiting the ability of someone to exercise their rights in a different state. Like, even in the context of marriage equality, there was a lot of times, like, there was an era where you could get married in Massachusetts. That marriage wasn't necessarily recognized by the federal government in terms of the federal rights that you would get as a married person. And you could go to Texas and you would not get any of the marital support, or I should say rights, that you get as a married person. They wouldn't recognize your marriage. But the idea that you're going to open up someone to liability for having gotten married in Massachusetts, there was no analog for that.
And let's just be clear, too. The people in, say, the Republican Party who say this should be left to the states, abortion should be, they're the equivalent of never-Trumpers in the Republican Party because they're not really relevant to what we're talking about here. I'm sure there are people who have that sincerely held belief, but they are not the power players or the people driving legislation. The reality is that it's a fundamentalist, organized effort, and that's the focus, not the very small numbers of the people that sincerely believe that. Because even the people that say they believe that, then they'll just be Lindsey Graham and introduce a federal ban as soon as you have the ability to do so.
So this story is specifically about the town of Llano, I don't know how to pronounce it, in Texas. And the thing about Llano, Texas, is that I think it's at an intersection of a couple of highways. And this is important because what the local ordinance purports to do is that if you are a woman driving on the roads in that town, headed towards another state where you still have a right to an abortion, or if you're driving someone to another state and you go through that town, their local ordinance makes it illegal to do so, and they allow for any private citizen to sue a person or organization they suspect of violating the ordinance. And I want to make something clear. They're going to get pro bono legal representation from right-wing groups that are going to provide this lawyer. So there is absolutely no obstacle for them to bring any suit willy-nilly.
This is the third city so far, by the way, in Texas to do this.
So if you are a traveling on highways such as Interstate 20 and Route 84, which head towards New Mexico, where abortion remains legal, and new clinics have opened to accommodate Texas women, according to the Washington Post, you're in legal jeopardy. And this is their end around. The Supreme Court never took issue with this type of like deputization of people to sue. That was essentially, Missouri had a law like this. Idaho began to impose criminal penalties on anybody who helps a minor leave a state. We're going to see more and more of this.
They're also in Texas targeting areas around major airports like Dallas and Austin. Lano is kind of closer to Austin, I believe. But
so if you're in a small town, and the reason why they're targeting towns, or I should say, and the targeting is happening obviously by right-wing groups. You get a town of 4,000 people, and maybe you drive through that town if you're on any given interstate highway, or you touch the airport in any way, or you surround the airport. Much easier to go in there for a rural town that's supportive, let's say, of Trump. Spend a little bit of money, get that ordinance on the books. You're certainly going to see that money come back. Through the donations that are going to come from those people who win their lawsuits. This is what the game plan is. And we hear a lot of talk about authoritarianism. Hear a lot of candidates talk about climate change and COVID being about tracking you and inhibiting you. Like,
we can hear a lot about states' rights.
Talking about this.
Well, I mean, I guess every state should have the ability to allow for abortion, and also the Constitution protects your right to travel. But some of the stuff they're looking into to make this a law is the Mann Act, a 1910 federal law, which is about stopping women from engaging in prostitution or debauchery, just to give people a sense of like how on the nose these folks are. It really is about controlling women, and the statutes they're citing to engage in this, and people who can get pregnant. The statutes they're citing in this instance to as the undergirding of their what they want to do backs that up as well. It's foundational. And
so, it remains to be seen whether this is constitutional, but it's hard to imagine that the Supreme Court is going to overturn something like this. And it's also unclear, whether it will rise to that, but we'll see.
And by the way, all those people that made process-based arguments about abortion, saying they should have gone through the legislature instead of through the courts, I'm glad that the process was at the forefront of people's minds as opposed to the rights, because it was not. Some things you're not able to pass through the legislature because of all of the institutional pressure and opposition to it, and abortion is one of those things. And it was done away with, but that only underscores how strong the opposition is, not the way that the right was secured.
And this was, and I guess lastly, the bottom line is this was fairly predictable.
Of course.
And this is where this is headed, and they're not going to stop with abortion. They're going to move on to birth control. They're not going to stop with states banning it. I mean, this is a de facto federal ban if you are from Texas, right? I mean, it is a de facto federal ban if you're from Texas. And this is just setting the baseline for what Republicans are going to seek if they're in a position to have control over the three branches of the federal government. That's what we're going to see. And they're not going to stop with this in the same way that they are not going to stop with anti-trans legislation. They're moving on to trying to challenge Obergefell. And this is just the way they roll. Their agenda is very explicit, and it is not negotiable because this is coming out of a religious fundamentalist mindset. Even and regardless of whether those who are practicing it are religious fundamentalists themselves. They have adopted a religious fundamentalist mindset, and that's what's driving the agenda. So there is no compromise. It is just a question of the pace in which they move forward to inhibit the rights of people who are not towing a religious fundamentalist line in terms of what sexuality is supposed to be, what individual rights are supposed to be. That's it. Bottom line.
And, we know from Stephen Crowder, Texas no-fault divorce state, maybe they're coming for that next, making sure that women don't have rights in those ways that they can be trapped by pregnancies and certain maybe abusive marriages. And just notice how, like, their interstate there are other laws. You mentioned marriage, but, like, for example, in some states, sports betting on your phone is legal. Say you wanted to cross the border from one state to another to place a bet on your phone and then come back. Are they really cracking down on that? Are they? No, because as we understand, the stuff that they're targeting is all about controlling women and controlling sexuality, whether it be for gay people or women as well.
All right, we're going to we'll keep you updated on any new laws in that respect.